Welcome to the course, Culturally Responsive Built Environments. Today we are going to discuss about cultural heritage and how it is reassembled, especially with the case of Kiruna, the moving mining town. So this lecture actually comes from my understanding while I was working in Sweden in Luleå University of Technology, and especially some of my colleagues, Professor Christina Nilsson and Jenny Soholm, Jenny Soholm was doing doctoral research at that time. And this is a very recent work, and which is an ongoing work. So I'm just presenting this, what happens when a town moves and what are the cultural complexities, especially the planning officials and the agencies do face. So I'll have a brief discussion on these kind of challenges. So this is a town near Arctic Circle, almost when you cross the polar circle in Sweden, and very near to the Norwegian side as well, but it is located in the northern end of the Sweden. And what you see here is the mining town. It's actually a hardly 100 to 150-year-old town. What you see here is the iron ore mine. And you know, Sweden is known for its rich economy based on its mining activities. And here, especially in the northern part of Sweden, you have many mines, and some of them are closed and some of them are still active. And this is one of the important mines, Kirunavaara. So, and based on this mining activity, the whole settlement has been formed in a span of 100 to 150 years. So what you see here is, this is what is today's Kiruna all about. And during the mining activities, because you know, the various intervention of various technological improvements and various advancements in taking the mine in a fast processes. So obviously they also have realized the threats. In 2013, when I was working there, and this is the map which actually shows that a kind of schematic sketch how this iron ore can actually affect the city. So here in 2013 it was there, and they're also predicting that by a decade it comes almost down the city center. So the mine is coming down like this, but it's coming over the city center. So the town is above the ground. So there is always, they predicted that there is always a danger that this town has a threat that it can fall any time, or it can come across a serious damage. So that is how they have identified to move, what is the possible steps to protect these inhabitants and their town. So they have identified two towns, two places, ideal places for relocating. And if you could, before that, I want to talk about what is Kiruna, because being in Arctic Circle, it is a very cold place. And as I discussed in my previous lectures, you can see that reindeer herding is one of the important source of, especially for the Sami tribes, and as well as these dog sledges, and the tourist economy is based on the ice hotel. And you know, there's a lot of, apart from the mine, there are also certain cultural activities which are embedded within that region. So if I want to discuss briefly about, so now this whole town, they plan to move to a faraway place. So the immediate question which one will get is where to move, how far we can move. So they identified one of the important two locations. Here there is a Luossavaara mountain, which there was also a closed mine. Ideally it was a preferable site. But then there was another site which is onto the B, which I have pointed out here. So this is what chosen. The reason was because in order to build a new town, so obviously it actually adds a lot of, one of the reasons could be the financial implications on moving the services. Because what we see in a town on above ground, and what we see the below ground itself is probably 2 times the investment of what we see from the building point of it. But how about to expand the services? And so finally they have chosen the B, but there were some predictions of, yes, if we are moving to B, obviously maybe after 50 years we may have to move again, but still what cost? So then, in order to bring new ideas into it and how to move the town, and obviously the Kiruna commune and the LCOB, which is the Lusawara Kirunawala, the mining company, the state-owned mining company, they all together, and they floated the competition for the new town and especially the new city center. In fact, the winning entry is they actually launched architectural competitions and white architecture along with their partners. So they have proposed this theme that it can be gradually taken into a kind of incremental basis. So you move a part of the town and then you slowly what part to be dismantled and what part to be moved. And so they have set up a few stages of how we can actually, a span of 100-year thorough plan of how to move a town. The right hand side you see the kind of town hall building, the tower over that, which are significant landmarks of the town. Now, in this proposals, there have been proposals of moving the railway station as well as building a new center, and so when we are planning for a new setup, so obviously there are also some concerns about the tribes, especially the Sami tribe. In fact, this is a very important case where the whole worldwide medias have represented about these concerns of moving Kiruna. So what you can see is some of the concerns which they have raised by the indigenous tribes, especially you can see the reindeers. This is a kind of herding route, and this has become a kind of traditional patterns how the reindeer passes through for their water resources, because you have the water resources, and how, but then in the whole process, because you have to be careful when you are building a road network, you are building a railway network, so how it should not affect these reindeer herding routes, so this is all a concern of these indigenous tribes, the tribal population living over there, and whose main source of the income is reindeer herding. And it also have an impact on the ecological aspects, natural, how it cannot disturb the water futures. So in that way, the whole competition started looking at a kind of compact planning and with a high density. So now, it's not just only the moving the buildings, the moving the residential buildings of the miners or the apartment blocks, but there's a big challenge here. So what you see is here on the left-hand side, the Kiruna Church, which was actually designed by the architect Gustav Wickman. And this, in fact, Jenny have worked on how this, being a conservation specialist, how this heritage will be in a question, and how it is taken by the whole authorities, and how it is considered in the process, and what are the dilemmas and what are the complexities coming in through the process. So there are some heritage buildings, especially which have shaped the meaning of given certain meanings to the Kiruna community. In fact, the church, it's not very old, but it's still inaugurated in 1912, which is hardly 100-year-old church, but still the kind of structure, it's all made with huge wooden shingles, and it's one of the listed buildings. And the town hall, which is again between 1950, it's not very old or ancient, but it's still the 1962. It is again designed by architect Arthur von Camelency. And this was, again, there's a clock tower. What you can see is the clock tower here, which was designed by artist Bror Marklund. So this town hall was awarded the Casper Salin Prize by the Swedish Association of Architects. This building was listed in 2001 and delisted in 2004. I'll tell you how this whole, in 14 years of time, how the listing and delisting process have happened, what are the stories behind it. So the important question was, what happens when we move a town? What happens to these heritage listed buildings which people had associations with? How their religious association with, how their social and cultural associationship with the town hall building, and how their memory, you know. So if you look at on the right hand side, you can see that there are two things. One is the Kiruna commune, which is responsible for the administrative aspect of it, of the town. But the LKOB, which is the mining company, if you look at the designated, this is where a company area, the blue color, and you have the service and the supply town, the existing scenario, and then you have the railway network, railway area. So basically this is how different zones. So what Jenny have done is she started collecting various of archives and she arranged everything, you know, what kind of documents are talking about this heritage. Like for example, the Kiruna Council, the conservation plan of town of Kiruna, and then what was the purpose of the document, and then she was looking at what kind of decision or a suggestion implication of that particular document. So in that way she collected, I mean, doing an archival study in such a rigorous manner and putting in a much more holistic, it's not just one document you refer it and put it for, but a series of documents which actually talked about this heritage and the whole movement process. She actually analyzed with this kind of, I'm just showing you one page of it, and especially where she was questioning the authenticity and relocation of this built heritage. Now in 1984, where Jenny talks about the heritization process, where almost what you see here is these are the red marks. What you see here is red marks, which are the designated areas or the red buildings, and the greens are the parks by in the local authority conservation plan, which was prepared in 1984. But then here we talk about three processes: heritization, reheritization, and deheritization. In heritization, what Jenny brings the idea of the addition of new heritage, because the moment this whole process is, the Kiruna is on move, and obviously what buildings to move, there is no clarity on is this the building we have to move, and what is the criteria for that, why we are making that. So there's not clear, there's a chaos between the decision makers and the various actors like LKOB and Kiruna Commune and the administrative board. So obviously in that whole process, it's in the white architect's entry as well. So they have thought about moving certain buildings, historic listed buildings, to the new location as it is. So in that process, obviously through the media, and so obviously there's an addition of new heritage. So and then in this process, the reaffirmation of already designated heritage, because once from the 1984 document, and we are taking, because this whole move started from 2004, 2005 onwards, and when the question of heritage came in, obviously these designated buildings have already been given a certain reaffirmation that yes, some of them will be taken into consideration. And the third aspect which Jenny talks is the reinterpretation of already designated heritage. So how it is interpreted and how it is again reinterpreted. And the fourth concept is rejection of previously designated heritage. So I'll explain you what is the process, which is a deheritization of it. And there have been many controversies of the built heritage. So in fact, on one side, they thought about, yes, it is good to take all the buildings out and construct in the same way as it was in the new location. But then the LKOB's decision, because obviously they are the finance holders, and to what cost? Because when they assess the whole cost of moving these buildings, So it has given them a much bigger insight, and that is where there's been a little conflicts between understanding on what to move and what not to move and how to move from the mining company perspective and from the administrative perspective and the community perspective. So this is what I just want to give a quote. What Jenny brings is because this whole site has been become a site of national heritage interest, and that is where the general director of National Heritage Board also written an article that the initiative to protect the historic buildings now under debate was made by the local authority itself. So she also stressed the battle is about which history we will be able to tell about Kiruna in the future, and thereby about the modern Sweden in the 20th century. So in this how, like, and what Jenny did was she collected a lot of interviews and different opinions, perceptions from different stakeholders, starting from National Heritage Board, from the LKOB, from various agencies working in the commune. And this is where the question of heritage on move, when we talk about the first state is the heritageation, because it is recognized with certain historic aspects and certain buildings are listed, and it is considered as national importance of heritage, in the list of that national importance. When it is subjected to move to a different place, obviously these particular buildings have got a reaffirmation that yes, these are taken into consideration, and in that whole process certain new buildings also have been added onto it. But then when what the map you see here is these are the historic buildings that will be moved during the urban transformation, and that is where the agreement between the local authority, the Kiruna commune, and the LKOB. So in that process, when they realize the cost of expenditure and they realize the complexities in taking it out, so that is where they started delisting certain buildings from 2014 onwards. So that is where she calls about the deheritization. So finally, they talk about up to 12 Blackhorn buildings. They have these are the church bell tower, and Halmar, the mining company offices, workplaces, or the residences, and even the fire stations. So there's a couple of buildings which were already there, and they have selected a few of them which has. So this is how the delisting process went on. I have to bring how it is also relevant from the planning perspective. On one side, we talked about how the heritage is on move and what complexities it has, because moving a building from taking each shingle and placing it back, it involves a lot of effort and a lot of careful effort to take each and every component and give the same meaning in a new setting, and what kind of charters will be applied and how the new setting and its landscape. I think there were also some documents which talk about some 15,000 square meters area, and of how it could be treated and the landscape component of it. So because it's not just taking a building and placing, but how you actually make that setting of it is also an important question for the architectural and urban design perspective. So Professor Christina Nilsson, with whom I have worked in Luleå University of Technology, she actually have written in Complexities about complexities in spatial planning practice and the theory. And here she talks about the complexities refers to uncertainties and unpredictable outcomes when different natural, technical, and social conditions are integrated with actions and reactions from various actors and stakeholders, and when a great number and a variety of elements and time dimensions interact in society as a whole and in planning in particular. So I'll explain you a brief. She adopts a critical realist theory and methods, and then she reveals what kind of complexities do exist in this whole process. One is here there are three important actors which one can look at. So one is the hierarchy component. So there are three. One is LKOB, which is a state-owned mining company, and because of the mine, the community do exist there, and the whole town do exist there. And the Kiruna commune, which is an administrative setup, which actually looks at the welfare of the community, and the communities which actually who are dependent on both the LCOB, and without them, LCOB is not there, and without LCOB, they are not there, and without these two, the Kiruna commune is not there. So this is how they're kind of interdependent roles. But now, the question is, in the beginning, when I was working in 2012, there were a lot of confusion on various aspects, especially the hierarchy. Who was the higher network? Because whether the commune has to, the Kiruna commune is taking the responsibility of the whole move, or the LCOB as a mining company, who is a financing component of it, is it taking the whole move prospects? So this was a little chaos, and it was not clear about these hierarchies. What role, which actor, and what role does each one of them play? There are also some uncertainties. Now the uncertainty is about, how about, yes, we are spending some billions of money and we are moving down, but what about due to the advancements in technologies, or due to, if the mining activity is completed maybe in the next 10 years, so what happens to the town later? Because it will be the same case even in the countries like Middle East, where the oil reserves are almost done. Then what happens to the future? What happens to those towns and cities which are completely dependent on that? So how we can bring about these local economies, So what about an alternative economies? So because that is how tourism is one of the aspects which the development agencies are looking at, so that it is not, so that to bring a kind of sustenance model. And the chaos and the non-linearity and interdependencies, as I said, that apart from the hierarchy, so this interdependence, because all these three actors are interdependent with each other. So with these processes, there was no clarity on the role, to defining the role. And obviously, there are some time variables. So, and when we talk about this, of course, there was an actor network perspective, which she talked about how, again, this all talks about how these roles and their networks are understood, and how the self-organization processes. The last one she talks about is the kind of time variable. Right now, we are talking about a 100-year master plan, and maybe from 2019 they want to set up all these things. But what are the various difficulties because certain decisions are not having any clarity, and certain decisions are in a debate, especially when the heritage came into the picture. And what you see in the reality is, because there are many ideas how to move the city, but on what idea and what is the kind of criteria one should take up further, and what happens, what about because there is also the financial backup and into it, the financial support, and how it has to go with these kind of timelines, and the fear, which is again linked with these kind of uncertainties. What happens if the mine is digged out in a quicker phase? So then it is definitely a waste of money of moving the whole town. Then it's how it will have an impact. So there's a lot of challenges the planning authority, and this is how they have to deal with the communities, what are their interests, and identify that, because we have to put all these actors together. That itself becomes, all the three actors coming into the same platform itself is a bigger task. In this whole process, what we have discussed is how, because it's adopting to the new Kiruna, which is from 2013 to 2015, where you can see that people are able to come to certain decisions, and things are moving on right now, though there are some complexities and a lot of debate are going on. And especially with these heritage component, where the cost is involved, it has taken a new shape. So what we are looking at is how the heritage is actually being discussed in three forms. One is the heritization process, and the second one is the reheritization process, and the third one is the deheritization process, and what are the aspects that has influenced these heritage outcomes or discussions. So one is through the media, obviously different interpretations came, and that is where when we talk about when the different interpretations come outside through the media or through various resources, obviously communities are in a kind of chaos. What is happening? Who is taking care of it? So that communication for the development of moving this is what we call it as a risk communication. So how we actually communicate the potential of the risk and what are the opportunities of moving a town and what are the possibilities. So that transparency, bringing the transparency in an orderly manner is almost very difficult. But still, what we should appreciate and what we should learn from the Kiruna case is compared to the South American cases where some of the Chinese have completely taken away the copper mines. So in those kind of relocations in South American context, what they did was they just gave the money and resettled them, just asked them to get out of this place, and then they want to take the whole mine out. So it is much more a business model. But here you can see a kind of a human concerns on how they are able to integrate communities and they are able to develop some discussions, a lot of workshops and a lot of engagements which is happening within the civic engagement. This is not just a political thing, and obviously there are a lot of court cases. People had raised a summons and appealed against certain decisions, and the Kiruna communes decisions were also appealed, and the LKOB decisions were also appealed. So in this whole process, there was a little component of the democratic values, but it is also taking some time, and there are different complexities within it. So I think what we have to learn from Kiruna is, or even in future, any movement of any town, it is not just moving a town as it is, cutting and pasting, like what we do in a computer, but it has to do, we have to really thoroughly involve and engage the community in understanding the hidden meanings and also look at the financial and the operational aspects into it. Thank you very much.